Help us all just to be what Jesus would have us to be, individually and collectively. Isn't it awesome we have that opportunity? I mean, that just doesn't get old for me, because I'm pretty much a nobody. I mean, not here in Summerville. Most of you've known me my whole life, but outside of Summerville, I mean, like 4 people know me. I'm a nobody. But God has empowered me and is using me and is using you and I to do his will. And that's just awesome. But you know what? To do that, this is not so awesome part. To do that, it takes a little bit of discomfort. I know I'm uncomfortable on a regular basis. I know I make Amanda uncomfortable even more often. But sometimes that's required. And we've been talking about this series entitled Faith for Real. Faith for real. Like the faith that gets out of our head, right? And impacts our lives. The kind of faith that gets out of our head and impacts our communities. The kind of faith that impacts the world. Now, Mike, you're getting all mystical. You're in fantasy world. We're in Summerville. The world doesn't know we exist. We just made Google Maps last year. Like, for that, they didn't even know we were here, right? No. We play a part. You play a part in God's role. But here's the ticker. You see, it's not all that outside the question if you tell me, Mike, you've got to make some changes. Say, Mike, you've got to be a better version of you. Like, okay, well, what do I have to do? Well, you have to give up chocolate. Can I still have ice cream? I can make some sacrifice. I can make some changes. I mean, imagine being told, we're talking about Summerville. You talked about an isolated place, right? We are insulated, isolated. You could probably throw a few more rhyming words in there and sound all sophisticated if you were sophisticated. But, I mean, there's a whole lot in the world that we just don't put up with. Because we're in Summerville. What if I told you that to be right with Jesus, you have to go on a missionary trip? Oh, and by the way, that's not to the resort areas of the Bahamas, because, you know, there's places in the Bahamas that aren't resort-like. Did you know that? People are nearly starving. Yeah, it's not even that. It's not even... How about Siberia? Oh, and by the way, you're not going there for a month or two. You're not going there for a year or two. That's you. That's where you're staying. Or maybe a third world country. Did you know there's places on the face of the earth that don't have, we're getting ready to come into summer. There's places that don't have air conditioning. You believe that? It's a true story. Yeah. You see, you can probably convince me that I need to take a step or two outside my comfort zone. And I think Christians as a whole, I think Mike has done just pretty okay at that. But what Jesus requires, what we need for faith to get out of our head, to impact our lives, and to change the world, is to completely let go of me. And not be something similar to me. Not be something close to me. Not to be something I'm comfortable with. But to be the clay in the potter's hands. You ready for that? Man, Corey read this, and he did a good job of reading it. I should have talked to him earlier, though. There's one part that he just really messed up. I don't know if you caught that or not. But he just read through there so well. And what's taking place in this passage that Corey read prior to what's before here is Jesus, among other things, says, if your brother sins against you 7 times in a day, forgive him. You know what that means? That's way different than me. You talk about no longer being close to Mike. We're not in the same county anymore. And Corey, here's the part where I'm teasing you about messing up. You read that. And the apostles said, increase our faith. You got me now, huh? That's all right. Increase my faith. Sorry about the high pitch, huh? Increase my faith, Lord. You know what they're saying? Not a chance. No way. No way. Not a chance. Imagine what Jesus just said. We missed it. We missed it. He said, I want to tell you something. If you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could say to that mulberry tree, is it a mulberry tree? I don't know exactly what it looks like, but it sounds like it would look good in my garden. You could say be uprooted and be planted in the sea, and it'd be done. You know what Jesus is saying? If you have faith for real, if you have the kind of faith that I'm peddling, if you have the kind of faith I've been talking about and sharing and dragging you guys along to see, nothing's outside the realm of possibilities. We talked last Sunday night here, because John was here Sunday morning. Sunday night, we talked about the hesitation for renovation and the fact that we hesitate for very good reasons to renovate our lives, our collective lives, because it's not fun, it's not good, it's dirty, it's messy, it's inconvenient, it stops functionality. It's got all these problems. But you may have thought by the end of the lesson, just how far do I have to go? How much do I have to renovate? You see, it's when I realized this about Jesus that I realized just how offensive he is. All of it. All of it. Every last bit. Lord, increase my faith. Increase my faith. Because, boy, that sure is easy seeing you all. But when I'm looking in the mirror, that's tough. That's tough. Increase my faith. Let's impact our lives, our churches, our communities, our nations. And folks, guess what? God cares about the world, whether Americans do or not. Let's change the world. Let's have an impact. Let's start right here in Summerville. Let's start right here in Mike's heart. And let's have the kind of faith that turns the world upside down, because that's exactly what we're talking about. I think about people changed. I think about people who have it all put together. And Jesus says, not even close. You know, Peter had a good livelihood. Peter had it all in order. Peter was providing for his family. Peter had a career. Peter would have shared with his children all the things they needed to know. Furthermore, Peter knew about God, and he knew about the kingdom, and he knew what needed to happen. He knew what was going to happen. He was certain about all of it. And Jesus says, not even close. Not even close. You see, Peter, The same guy has it all put together, has all the answers. He's like a young Mike. Is the same guy who says, Lord, I know what needs to happen. And I can't believe I've missed this most of my life, but again, I'm starting to see Mike and Peter more and more because there's all these soldiers, armed soldiers there, and who does Peter attack but Caiaphas? I'll show you how strong I am. I'm going to pick the little guy. I don't know who I'm picking a fight here with today, but it's not Andy. I could stay on your left side, couldn't I? Might bear a chance, right? The high priest's assistant. But he's going to conquer the world. Isn't that interesting? We know how the whole world could be better. We know what needs to happen and what everyone else needs to be doing. And we're going to chop the high priest's assistant's ear off. You see, that's the same Peter had it all figured out. It was the same Peter that said, Jesus, I will never leave you. Not ever. I mean, this Peter was so certain of everything. He's sitting with a group of people that have been with Jesus just as long as he has. And Jesus says, you're all going to leave me. He says, they might, Lord, but not me. You know what he's saying? Tom, I'm better than you. I'm better than Ray and Mike and Andy and Mike. And we'll all the Mikes in here. Mike and Mike and Mike and Mike. Right? I'm better than the rest of them. And just hours later, Peter understood that he wasn't certain of much of anything. And maybe, the most honest thing, the most accurate thing that Peter uttered throughout all that scenario is when he says, I swear, I don't know the man. You see, this is the thing about all of life's successes. It's always accomplished by the people who have everything put together, who have all the answers, who you keep all their skeletons in a closet. And with God, in particular Jesus, he never uses anyone until you understand that the rooster's crowing. You see, the world says, I can't follow Jesus. I can't have an impact. You don't know me. You're right, but God does. And it sounds like you're getting close to his service. It sounds like you're getting close to being used, because Peter wasn't willing to do anything outside of close. You see, Peter said, Lord, you know what we gave up for you? Excuse me. Do you know what we gave up for you? I left my wife at home. She's going to be mad when I get back. Do you know what sacrifices I made for you, Lord? Peter's saying, look how far I've come. And Jesus says, not even close. Because this isn't the Peter. Sorry, a little quick with the click. This isn't the Peter that's going to change the world. This is. Around 43 days later, the same Peter who cowered and swore he didn't know Jesus, when it was revealed to him by the Spirit what the kingdom was and what was really needed for him, he no longer is wielding a sword at the high priest's servant. He's no longer cowering in the corner. He stands up and he says, I want the whole world to know who Jesus is. You see, the whole known world was assembled right there in Jerusalem. And he says, let it be known. I've met this guy. He's changed me. And pardon the diversion from the inspired text. For an understandable summary, he's about to change you. That's not the same Peter. It's not the same Peter. You see, Peter knew that about himself. Jesus knew that about him. But you talk about faith for real, the faith that got out of Peter's head and got into his life. You see, when everyone else looks at him, they're like, huh, looks like a Summervillian to me. Tell that guy's from Summerville. But he's been with Jesus. Wow. Wow. The kind of change doesn't come by saying, Jesus, you can have a little bit of me. You want the world to be different? Let go. Mike, let go. Be willing to do what's uncomfortable. Be willing to do what's needed. Be willing to do what's like Jesus. I can't help but get it out here because it's going to involve our next guy that you saw peak. But these guys turn the world upside down. We realize that? You see, this is why it's important to let go of me. Peter's just a fisherman. Peter, bones would be, I don't know, we'd still have bones by now? Not much of them. Right? Who you never would have read about had he not let go of everything he was. But you know, Peter just didn't change Peter. Let me rephrase that. Jesus didn't just change Peter. He used Peter to change the world. You are here today because Peter allowed Jesus to change him. The world is drastically different today because Peter allowed Jesus to change him. You want a sobering book? Read What If Jesus Had Never Been Born? Just stop and think about the ways that Christianity has changed the world forever. It started with a bunch of outcasts. It wasn't Julius Caesar. Oh, he changed the world. It wasn't Napoleon. Oh, he changed the world. It was this group of nobodies who'd been with Jesus. Saul, not even close. You talk about a guy who had it all together, who knew all the answers, who'd spent his life studying God's word and was too certain of himself to see what Jesus needed or even what Jesus was. You know, Saul had the world by the tail. I don't know about you, but the Saul prior to Acts 9 looks a whole lot better than the Saul after Acts 9 from a worldly standpoint. I mean, Saul wasn't quite going to be the next president. He's the next governor, though. That's where Saul was. I mean, he's a shoo-in for governor. He's scrambling to save his own life, the rest of it. Saul, not even close. Saul says, man, these Christians, I know what needs done with them. They need eradicated. I'm going to take care of that. He says in Acts 22 and verse 4, bear in mind he is on trial with his life in the balance. And he says, brothers and sisters, I was just like you. He's talking to his accusers. And he says, I persecuted the way to death, binding and delivering to prison both men and women. Acts the 9th chapter. Paul, Ananias is told to go to Saul, right? I mean, Ananias doesn't know about what just happened prior, where Jesus appears to Saul, he hits his knees, he is forcibly humbled. He didn't humble himself, he's forcibly humbled. And Jesus says, Saul, what are you doing? What are you doing? Ananias didn't know anything about that. He comes to Ananias, he says, Ananias, go over here to Saul and tell him what he needs to do. And Ananias says, what? You know who that man is? Wow. How many times have you said to Jesus, what? Do you know who that is? Do you know who that is? I'm going to touch upon tonight John, the 4th chapter, where the disciples might go into Samaria, and who'd they come back with? No one. But the woman goes in, who'd she come back with? The whole town. You see, sometimes I think we lose track of who Jesus is, and other times I think we know too well who other people are. Jesus, you know who this is? Think about all the people. We could have talked about Peter. Think of all the times Peter tried to argue with Jesus. Laughable, isn't it? How many times do you argue with him a week? Well, let's not touch that one. Do you know Ananias is now arguing? Do you know who this is? This is telling. This scares me. This scares me. You know, we all talk. We all talk. We all say, man, I want to do what Jesus wants me to do. Man, I'm following Jesus, man. I'm just all about Jesus. Pause for just a second. Put yourself on the other side of this conversation where Jesus is talking about you. He says, Ananias, I want you, now, I've chosen him as my instrument, as my vessel. Don't you worry none. I'm going to show him what he has to suffer. We're not so comfortable anymore. Wow. Imagine Saul. What do I have to change? The way I believe? Some of my actions, the way I do. Ooh, that's a leap off that pedestal. Right down into the mud and mire of this world. You see, Saul becoming Paul is not a short journey. It's an incredible, divine leap. Acts 17th chapter. This isn't Christians saying this about what takes place. In fact, in Acts 4, it wasn't Christians saying, these are just a bunch of commoners who've been with Jesus. No, it's unbelieving individuals that say, wow, something's happened to their life. These people aren't the people they once were. They were with Jesus. So that was unbelievers saying that. It's unbelievers in Acts 17. This is their accusations against the Christians. And when's the last time that this accusation could be made about our church or any church? These men who have turned the whole world upside down have come here also. turn the world upside down, brethren. I've got to let go of me. We as Christians have to let go of me. Jesus was radical. We need to be radical Christians. All the imagery that you just had in your mind, throw that away, because that's not the kind of radical we need to be either. We need to be radical Christians. We need to let go of all the things we're so certain of, all the things we know, all the things we're fond of, and serve Jesus. In doing so, will change not only our lives, we will change the lives of the people sitting next to us and the people who aren't sitting next to us in the next generation, in the generation that's not born yet. And we, let me rephrase that, the Lord, through us, will turn the world upside down. We're not even close. Lord, increase our faith. Not even close. Well, Mike says we're not even trying. I believe we've been trying, Tom. We're not even close. Not even close. You know what the beautiful side of that? I kind of touched on all the ugliness of that. Oh, there's difficulties coming. There's difficulties going to be around every corner. There's always going to be difficulties. I'm going to have to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. You want to know what the beautiful side of that is? The potential is unlimited. We're not even close. Not even close. I want to end with this thought. Isn't that awesome? Mike says end at 11:01. I want to end with this thought. We will never be close because we got to be going. You know, sometimes we boil the scripture down into these short little lists, right? And we always avoid words like go in this short little list because that word go is never ending. Oh. That means no matter where I am, I can't stay here. I got to go. I got to be going, right? Here's what I want us to think about. We get way too focused as people in getting other people to come. But we don't want them to come. What we want is them to be just like us. We're going to touch on this tonight, Lord willing. But, I mean, we do this with kids, right? Come in here and act like adults. You know what Jesus constantly was saying to the adults? You need to act like kids. Wow. Wow. But, you know, kids are just this representation of someone that's very different than me. Very different. And the fact of the matter is, I don't want to be attractive to people who are like me. The more homogeneous our churches are, the more homogeneous we are, in other words, the more alike we are, the more I believe it means we've been failing. I need people different than me. You see, Jesus was all about this, right? He tells the disciples this. He says, man, you're going to be my witnesses. This is like one of the last things he says to them. Cool. Cool, Lord. Cool. You're going to receive power. Awesome. Great. And you're going to tell all of Judea about me. Wow, that's awesome. And then you're going to tell the Democrats? Oh, pause. The Republicans? You know, those are people they have some similarities. We kind of forget this, that we're Americans, right? And that other party that we get so tied up in bashing, right? It doesn't matter what party you're in to talk about that. There are people all over this country don't believe that you can be saved if you're a Democrat. And there's people all over this country don't believe you can be saved if you're a Republican. And they're both right. We've got to get real about this. We've got to go to Samaria, but guess what? Guess what? Who's our enemy in the world? Oh, it's those Chinamen and Russians right now, right? Yeah. Jesus says, you're going to China. You're going to China. And you're going to Russia. And I'm getting serious about the part that we have to love our enemies. Brother, you didn't think I'd talk about being uncomfortable and not get a little uncomfortable, did you? I mean, the temptation's real, amen? The temptation's real just to avoid all the real stuff, but we're talking about faith for real. Faith for real. The kind of stuff that actually changes things. Right? You think that's crazy. We have this passage, maybe, and we talk a lot about this. If we don't think that the Jews and the Gentiles could get along, I think we understand how different they are. And Jesus, God through Paul, here's how much Saul, I mean, he's a Pharisee. When we understand what a Pharisee is, and God takes Saul, turns him into Paul, and in the process says, hey, Pharisee, you're going to go talk to the Gentiles, not just talk to the Gentiles, you're going to live with them. Paul says, I became all things to all people. Pharisee, you're going to become a Gentile. There could have been little worse about hearing those words. He says, you're a Jew. Big deal. Now you're a Christian. You're a Gentile. Big deal. Now you're a Christian. Right? We understand how different those are. We understand that the idea is not to bring people in here and make them look and act and feel like I do. Because I don't even want to be me. And I think we could all say that when we're in our honest moments. God, through Paul, says, I've broken down that middle wall of barrier. Yeah, sometimes, these things are so extreme, kind of like loving your enemy. Sometimes they get so extreme that we're prone to saying that's hyperbole. And the message doesn't quite hit home. Right? It's kind of like when I was a young kid and Mom said, your room's always going to be clean. It's never going to be dirty. When do you have to clean it? Always. Well, that's so far out of the question. I'm relieved to hear that. Sometimes we do that with Jesus, right? So far out of the question, I'm just relieved to hear that. That can be the case with some of the things we look at here. Let's bring this home. Jesus didn't just change the world with a bunch of misfits. He changed the world with the most unlikely group of misfits. You see, here's the secret. Jesus didn't change the world through Peter. Peter's just a man. He changed the world by changing Peter. This is the group. This is who he used. I mean, crazy, isn't it? Crazy. There's no world leaders on there, right? There's very little education on that list. In fact, there's very little description on that list, isn't there? But the description that's there is really, 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 really important. Matthew's a thug. Matthew is a thief. Matthew is worse than all these. He's the legalized thug and thief. He's a tax collector. Ali, you want to know how bad that is? Here's how bad it is. Scripture, normally, when they want to pick on Jesus, they say, he's with sinners. You think that would sum it up, right? And tax collectors. That's how bad Matthew is. Why is that significant? You know, if Jesus went around and he gathered up all these fishermen and he threw a tax collector in there for good measure, you say, wow, it's pretty amazing, right? But do you know who sat across the table from Matthew? It's this other guy named Simon. Not the Rock. The other Simon. The one who had the dagger up his sleeve. You know why he had the dagger up his sleeve? He was sworn to kill any Roman he came in the presence of. You know who these guys start killing in just a few years after this reading? The Jews who refused to fight the Romans. You know what we call these guys today? Terrorists. Simon the terrorist. By definition, that's what he's doing. They would assassinate people in the most public of places in order to have the most dramatic impact on society they could have. We've heard those words before, haven't we? We've heard those words before. How'd Jesus get them to work together? I don't think they ever did. It was meant to be shocking. Because Matthew, the tax collector, was defined by being a tax collector. And Simon, the zealot, was defined by being the zealot. And Jesus didn't change the world with Matthew, the tax collector. He didn't change the world with Simon, the zealot. He changed the world with Matthew, the Christian, and Simon, the Christian. Uncomfortable? I hope so. I hope so. Paul says, I haven't attained yet. I haven't got there yet. I am not yet like Jesus. And so I'm going to run with all my heart. And I'm going to give it all of my effort. And here's the beauty. That's what Jesus wants of you. You don't have to be a tax collector. You don't have to be a terrorist. You don't have to be a zealot. You don't have to be X, Y, Z. I've put enough labels on enough people today. You make your own label. The only one that matters is who we serve. If you don't, why not? I want to get real for you a moment. I need you. I need you to serve him because I'm weak. And of all the sincerity and realness and truth that I've spilled on the table this morning, that's right up there. I make you this promise. I won't always make you happy. I won't always make you proud. I won't always be where you think I ought to be. But I made a promise to a man who gave his life to me. That'll be all I can to serve him. And that means serving you. If we can help you to further those efforts or to begin them, if you've not yet done that, please make that known. Together we stand and sing.